Hi everyone, I wanted to show you how I made Baba Yaga's house. It's a sculpture that I made recently and I wanted to show you how I made it, and what I've had to do is cut out chunks of the video and speed bits up, because otherwise, I mean, this took me 2 days total, but like the actual main construction of the basic shape of the house took me about an hour. So obviously I've got tons of footage. I've had to cut it down. If you want to see a time lapse of it completely from start to finish, let me know and I'll upload a video of that. But for the purposes of this video, I've shortened bits out and took sections out just for time. Because I aim, the longest I want to do a video is for about sort of 20-something minutes. I don't really want to go any longer than that, but let me know if you'd have preferred to see the whole thing, and I can always do that for you. So, Baba Yaga is from Slavic folklore, and she lives in a forest, and the house is obviously made from scraps and bits from the forest, and it's also, instead of stilts for the house to be on, it's on a big pair of chicken feet. And my interpretation of the house is I want it to look very woody, like it's made out of bits of the forest. I want it to look like the forest is growing into it. And for the chicken feet, I made it look like it's a mixture between the shape of chicken feet, but also the textures of wood and trees. So it's sort of like the feet are sort of like half tree, half chicken feet. Because I imagined it would be that she'd made the feet out of wood and then cast some sort of spell, and then they became chicken feet that would help move the house around, because the story goes that the house can walk around and move around in the forest on these chicken feet. So what I did first was I took just some cardboard box card and some cardboard tubes. And what I did was just construct the basic shape of the house that I wanted. I decided to do it out of card because I knew the feet were going to be made out of either wire or some sticks and things. So obviously I can't have it too heavy, else it'd never stand up. So I got the basic layout and made it out of cardboard, added some basic details like window frames, the door, that sort of thing. And then once I was happy with the shape of it and how it was looking, I then went over and added some more details, like roof tiles, that sort of thing. And once I was happy with it, then it was the stage where I could start looking at more textures and improving the shape of the house in general. Once that had sort of dried, what I did was I started adding detail. I cut out some little squares of card and just stuck them overlapping very roughly to create the roof tiles, and created more windows and the door that I stuck into place. Unfortunately, it's slightly off camera here. And at this stage, I was originally going to make it all out of cardboard, and then I realised I've got some little twigs and some bark slices, which I bought from my local craft shop. And I thought, well, I could use those for the actual construction of the house, because it will add the wood texture to it instantly. Because at this stage, it's all too smooth, and I thought, it's not going to have that woody texture that I want. It's going to sort of look like when I made Winnie's Cottage, when I made Tumbledown Cottage, which was my other witch house I made. And I thought, I want this one to look rougher, more earthy, and more sort of like it's made out of things from the forest. So after I did the last couple of bits of detail on this stage, I then decided to go through and cover it with the bark and the sticks, and it looked like this. I used the bark in chunks to create the roof tiles, and used the sticks to create the roof on the towers, like the cone roofs on the towers, and also add some of the sticks around the house to add to that texture. I want it to kind of look like it's a tree morphing into a house, kind of. I want it to look very much like it's from the forest. Then I added stairs and added some twigs going through to make it look like it was kind of growing through. The tree's growing through the house, and it's sort of mingled in with nature. And I also created the chicken feet with some more sticks because I wanted it to kind of look like it's half chicken feet, half tree. Because again, like I said, I wanted it to look like it's from the forest. I want it to look like it's made out of things from the forest. So I imagine the way it would look would be, it would have these chicken feet, but they were made originally out of like wood, and then obviously some sort of spell's been placed upon it so that they move and are shaped like chicken feet, but it's actually trees, if you get me. Then I spray painted the whole thing black, which is always the first thing I do with a model like this if I'm making like a haunted house type thing. And then I got some white paint and brown acrylic paint, and then just dry brush that over the top of the house. Originally it looks a bit creamified, and I did go over it later on just on that original bit of roof, because I didn't want to do pure white, but it didn't quite look right once I did it. And then once I got the colour I wanted, I then proceeded to dry brush the rest of the house. And if you look, I've stuck a couple of little things on. I've got a couple of skulls I've stuck on there. At the top of the stairs, I've put a couple of marbles I glued into place and then spray painted to create sort of like round sort of finials, I think they're called, like the things that go on, like the sort of banisters of the stairs. And what I like about dry brushing over the black is the black obviously gives you the depth, and then dry brushing over the top makes all those textures and details pop, which is what I like about this technique. You'll see the parts of the house that are not covered in the bark and the twigs, I've got strips of card which I've stuck overlapping each other to make it look like originally underneath it's like a house that was made out of wooden planks. But then over time, bits have been added to it, the forest has grown into it, and it's sort of like all mingled and merged together. I made it look like it got a boarded up window at the back. I kind of like that effect because I didn't want to bother to cut out the windows for that one. The rest of the windows, you'll see at this stage, they're all just solid, but what I do afterwards at the end is I go through and I cut open all the little windows, all the little sort of gaps in the windows, so that they look like they go into the house, because at the minute it looked very flat. And I've got lots of like little bits of hot glue were hanging around and were... you know, that where you move something with hot glue and you get these tiny little sort of hairs of hot glue everywhere. But I left them on because I took some of them off that were in my way of painting, but I left most of those on to add to the texture, because I wanted it to look like it's covered in cardboard, covered in cobwebs, I mean, not cardboard. So later on, the ones I removed, I did replace and put extra sort of cobweb effects using my hot glue gun over it to add to the texture, to make it look like, you know, it's overrun with spiders and creepy stuff, and yeah, just to add to the creepiness of it really. And as you can see, by dry brushing over the top, you start to see all the textures of the bark and of the sticks, and it just makes them stand out way better. It just like makes all those details pop, and it's just such a simple technique, and I use it for everything. It's brilliant. You can, depending on what you do, you could use different, like you could use like an antiquing effect and stuff, but I find for stuff like this, it's always best to start off by spray painting black and then painting other colours over the top. It just dulls down all the colours and it just adds to the effect. But I love how when you first go over with that, with the sort of grey, how it makes all those details pop and stand out. It's just, I really like the effect. I use a fairly small brush when I'm dry brushing because I want to get the all those little details and into those little nooks and crannies. So it does take a bit longer, but I like it because I can get more into intricate areas, because obviously I've got to sort of dry brush inside the porchway where the front door was, and underneath the stick roofs of the towers. I'd got a sort of dry brush in there for the base of the towers. With the towers as well, as I did sticks lined up in sort of like a sort of almost diagonal position. I wanted it to look like the towers were sort of twisting and turning, and how it was like it's made out of sticks and stuff, but it's over time it's all twisting and turning and becoming all very gnarled and tangling into each other. I want this to look like it's like a living, breathing house, like it's, you know, everything over time is distorting and morphing and moving, because at the end of the day this house can move, so things are going to twist and turn and change shape. And every so often you'll see me move the camera down so you can see what I'm working on. So once I'd done the top part, I started working a bit more on the porchway, getting bits to stand out. If you put too much white paint on an area, you can just wipe it off. And also the joy of this is you can go over it again with black paint just to tone everything down if you need to. It's a very forgiving technique, because you can always just paint it black and start again if you feel you've gone too heavy-handed with the dry brushing, which is brilliant. It's one of the reasons why I like the technique so much. The little skulls, originally I wasn't going to paint those and leave them white, but obviously in the process of touching up the paint, when I've spray painted everything black, obviously they accidentally got sprayed black. So with the skulls, I just painted them white with a little bit of acrylic paint, just to make them stand back out. So I just dry brushed them. I did add a second layer of white to make them stand out a bit more in the end. And what I'm doing now is, once I've gone over the whole thing in the sort of greyish white colour, then what I'm doing is taking some white and just very lightly going over some of the areas that I want to stand out a bit more. So any textures that I want to stand out more, to be more prominent, I'm going over with the white. Again, just dry brushing. You will find as well, if you make something like this, you get the odd bit that falls off when you're dry brushing. It just happens because it's very small bits, and I've glued them on with the minimum amount of glue possible in some areas. So I did have to glue on a couple of window frames back in place, but that's fine. It happens. It's easily fixed. And then I've got a bit where some bark had peeled off from the piece of bark that I'd used at the side, and just touched up that with the black. And then once I was happy with how the dry brushing was, I did the same on the feet and the base of the house, and then I did some more cobweb effects with my glue gun, and I added a little bit of moss, and that's it. That's how I made Baba Yaga's house for my haunted village. Hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.